I haven't taught research classes in a while, so. All right. Strategies is the focus of this week. Strategies. And I'd like to hear from you all as some classroom experiences that you've either had this semester or that you're planning or that you're considering. Thinking in terms of strategies, really thinking about what kind of learning strategies that you could promote in your class. And so I'm not sure if someone would like to start off our discussions, thinking about some practical situation where maybe learning strategies would help your students. I would like us to again focus on the relationship between the particular strategy and the skill, or strategies. It could be more than one, but this relationship between the strategies and the skills. Thinking in terms of our students as English language learners. Anyone want to start us off? Same time.
The case today, we try an activity. We're going to ask the students to watch a video in English that talks about the topic we are reviewing in the class. And I'm going to give them instructions about before they have to read 7 questions I already posted in the platform. Then I'm going to ask them to watch the video, take some notes if they need it, and maybe watch again the video. It's like 7 minutes. So maybe in the class they can watch a couple of times, and then I'm going to ask them to write the questions in the platform. So with this I try to engage the students to practice the listening and the writing. And also related to the topic we are discussing in the class. As evidence, they have to write down the answer to each of these 7 questions in the platform. And maybe I don't know, maybe because sometimes the time is short, and I would like to have a discussion after that. If the times how this meeting, I can record the discussion.
Okay. Questions, comments, suggestions from us?
The skill you want to develop is to listen and reading, listening and speaking.
No, listening and writing.
Writing. Okay.
Especially because there are a lot of technical words that we already reviewed in Spanish. I want them to practice the listening, the comprehension. Because the video, I don't speak in the video. I just post the link, YouTube video. But I think the professor that talks in the video speak clearly.
Is how do you know that they will have the English level to understand the video?
Because at the beginning in the semester, I start with a video. I mean, I develop the topic and then I post a video. Everybody watch the video, and then I ask some questions.
In English and Spanish?
In English. And then
At the beginning of the semester.
at the beginning of the semester. And then we have a couple activities. For example, I gave them a problem, they have to solve it, but this kind of like a performance task, but because it was an activity, it was a short activity, where they have to solve the problem, and then by teams, by couples, they play a role. For example, Manuel is the statistical advisor and the manager of the company, so he has to explain to me the findings or the solution of the problem, and then change the role. So after that, I post like a survey where I ask them about the activity, how they perceive the activity. And I noticed that some of them they say my English level is not good, but from 32 students, only 3, 4 say that their English level is not good. The other one can say they like it, they get the results.
What semester?
9. So that's why I encourage them, especially for students to speak, to read.
So I have a question for you then. So would you always suggest us to evaluate our students at the beginning of the semester to see their English level before we plan an activity in English?
Well, if we look at the definition of formative assessment, I would probably suggest that, or say that we're probably always evaluating from the very first class. Now, your question might be more in terms of maybe a formal assessment or summative assessment or a diagnostic, something a little bit more formal. And I think it's going to depend on each of your cases. I would probably suggest, it depends, but I probably wouldn't do a diagnostic exam. I would just try to start speaking as much as possible and or have them speak as much as possible as early as possible so that you can start evaluating, not necessarily an exam, but you're listening, right? You can see if they are responding and not, and then take that information and say, okay, I think I can do this. I'll try this activity. I'll think I'll do this. So it's all about, you know, listening, trying to be aware, and ask them to do something in English early on. Of course, if you never ask them to do anything in English, you're not going to know. If you're not going to speak in English, you're not going to know if they understand you or they have problems understanding you. So I think as early as you can and as much as you can, you speaking English and them speaking English, you can start making decisions about, okay, I could probably do this one type of activity, maybe we can't do it all in English, but we can try this. And I think just as you get to know your students, you're making decisions, hopefully little by little, incrementing the English percentage over time, right? That would probably be my suggestion, not so much, because an exam's only going to tell you so much, plus it's time consuming. And so you don't want to waste your time, right? You don't want to waste your students' time. We all have a fixed amount of time to cover course content, the objectives. So it's really just trying to, just try to get in and use as much English as possible and just see what you can what you can do, and maybe not jump into it, because of course there's the extreme where you have a whole huge activity all in English, and your students probably, maybe they don't participate, and then, you don't want that either. So it's really just kind of testing the waters, so to speak. It's like putting your toe in the water to see what the temperature is, and then little by little you go in and get into the English part as much as you can. But again, I would suggest to everyone, just try. Don't be afraid to, if your students are, if they're reluctant, to try to encourage them and just try little by little, because I think over time they're going to start feeling more comfortable, just as we all do with learning another language. The more we use it, and the more we hear our teacher use it, the less of a, maybe a big deal it is, right? Maybe the first time you speak English, they may start to laugh, or they'll be, what's that? Or, they make some sort of reaction, maybe just because they're not used to it. But if you start to speak more and more in English, they're going to feel more comfortable with it, and then after a while, it's not going to be a big deal, right? And hopefully, by them speaking, it's not going to be a big deal for them trying to speak. And so, I think it's trying to get over that initial shock, maybe, if that happens. If it doesn't happen, that's great, right? I mean, if they're receptive from the very beginning, that's wonderful. But I'm trying to think of it from the perspective of kind of the worst case scenario. I mean, what could happen, right? They could laugh at you for speaking English because they're not used to it. They're going to be scared to death to speak in English because they've never been asked to speak in English. And so it's just trying to get through that process. And that's where the strategies come into play. It's like you're giving them the tools to help them succeed as an English speaker. Right? You're giving them options. You're not telling them what to do necessarily, but you're giving them options. Saying, look, you can try to do this, try this. Maybe you've never tried it before, but try to underline the words, the key words that we talked about in the video, or that they talked about in the video. Alex, in your case, did you present the questions before the video?
Yeah, well, today I will present the question before. Been able to
Today.
Yeah, today. Yeah, because there is some issues because I got a mixed group, and some of the students asked me to attend class today. So
To not attend class?
some of them,
Okay.
because they have an exam.
Okay.
But anyway, yes, I already posted in the platform, posted the questions. And yeah, to ask you to read the question before we touch it.
All right. Does anyone have some suggestions about maybe some possible strategies or additional strategies that could be used? We've identified 2 skills here, listening and writing specifically. We can think about these skills, or we certainly can think about any other skills that might apply to Alex's context. Any suggestions?
I will just add reading, maybe one in Spanish, one in English. Spanish reading will be really basic, and then maybe the English more advanced, so they get familiar with the words and they have time ahead, like 1 week ahead, to understand the meaning of the words. And when they listen the word, then they will be familiar with it, so they don't get lost during the class, because it's very uncomfortable to get lost in the class, and then you will waste 1 hour.
But you prefer to give them in English the context or in Spanish?
I mean, for example, you choose one topic, right, that you are going to show in the video, and you can give them 1 week ahead 2 readings about the same topic. That will contain, that will have the main keywords, Spanish and English.
Context.
Yeah, actually, we already see the topic in Spanish, and most of the keywords, because we use a statistical software, all these keywords are in English, so we already know example, strat, estimation, mean, variance. Yeah.
I don't know, but maybe with Isaiah, if they can build or consult a glossary of key terms and reading the definitions, or another is if they have access to a subtitled version of the video, because it's more easy to listen for us when we have the writing text on
And the subtitles could be in English also.
at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's very nice, most important.
Actually, in YouTube,
You can
yeah,
you
have
can choose
this English
automatic
subtitles.
translation.
Yeah, like you can. Maybe I don't know. I'm thinking maybe the first time, yes, watch, listen. That's it. Second time, we add the English subtitle. Okay. I don't know.
I think a good exercise to have maybe stronger outcomes could be make them synthesize what they have seen in a phrase, so they can also talk about it, or maybe to connect what they have seen with what they could learn about. I mean, any question regarding what they have already watched in the video, talk about it, and now I think I could try to understand this, or maybe right now I could try to search about something else, to link with other knowledge that they could, or that they might have.
Maybe I can add another question with an open, not question, but space where they can write down what they learn about it.
Yes, or maybe ask them what elaborate a sentence where you link this information with what you could search, or any other subject related to, or maybe something related to your syllabus, or maybe with another topic seen in another class, or something that they want to do in the future, something like giving them perspective and meaning to what they have done.
What's the difference between strategies and skills?
I reflect a little bit about this question, and I think that a strategy is related with how, when, and which kind of activities we want to implement in order to achieve some goal. And a skill is related with performance of some, because I think that the listening and writing could be, of course, skills, but it could be strategies for learning. For example, I use reading for learning vocabulary, for orthography, or and reading is a skill that I can develop. But when I speak about the skills, behind is the idea of performance, some kind of performance. And when the skill is a medium in order to search an end, I use it's a strategy, because the strategies are directed to enhance the skills. I don't know, that's my context.
Well,
Okay.
as we have talked about it, the intention. The skill is something that you could have or you could develop. I mean, it's like dancing. You can dance. But if you go to a dance club where you want to learn how to dance, maybe some Zumba or something like that, that's like a strategy. The difference is the intentionality on what we are doing to gain the skills.
Anyone else? And let me just to clarify too, what I mean by strategy, let me be a little bit more specific. What I mean within the context of this course is a learning strategy. Okay. So what is it, the difference between learning strategy and skill? Anyone else?
Well, yesterday, you say the strategy is something that you plan, sorry, that you plan to help the student to develop skill. So I'm thinking about this activity. The strategy is to present the video and ask them the question in order to that the student can maybe improve, I don't know, listening, right? I don't know.
The strategy is to improve the English using a lot of writing, listening, and writing. But the other strategy is to engage the student in the English. Is a strategy for him?
Right, well generally speaking, yes, we want to improve learning, the skill. But we've identified specific skills here, listening, we mentioned writing, and reading. Those are the ones that were mentioned so far in our discussions. That's not to say those are the only skills, but those are the ones that were mentioned. Now, we talked about activities. Some of you are using words like activities, making sure you have good activities. But I want us to try to think as specific as possible when we look and consider strategies versus skills. Let me give an example. Some of you mentioned the use of a dictionary. Right? Now, of course, we could say, oh, is that a skill, using a dictionary? But look at it like this. Think of it like, I'm using a dictionary for what purpose? Understanding words. So imagine I have an article, and I have my dictionary right here, and when I don't understand the reading, I turn to the dictionary, and it helps me with identifying the words, perhaps. Okay, so you could say the use of the dictionary in this context of, right, I've got my article, my dictionary, this would be a strategy to promote reading comprehension. This is what I'd like for us to recognize and say, this use of a dictionary would be an example of a learning strategy, because this is not something you're doing as the teacher. You're saying, hey, you guys, if you have questions, if you have doubts about the text, use your dictionary. Does everybody have your dictionary? All right, use your dictionary, right? So they decide if they're going to use a dictionary or not, depending on if they need it for the reading. That would be an example of a learning strategy versus the related skill. Another example could be the use of subtitles, maybe to promote the listening skill. Right? Using the subtitles to promote the skill of listening comprehension. Okay. When we start talking about activities that require analyzing, synthesizing, we're almost now getting to the point of after the skill. Well, I would need to be able to understand the article before I could synthesize it, right? So try not to mix the activities, which are all good, right? We definitely want to analyze, synthesize, and do all those things, compare and contrast. But what do I need to do to be able to understand this text? Or what can I do to understand the video? Because I need to understand it before I can analyze or synthesize or compare and contrast. Okay, so think of it, if we're looking at individual skills like listening and reading, which we should be doing, this is part of the point of this class, since we're looking at English language learners, we do need to be aware of listening, reading, writing, and speaking strategies and skills, these things, because of course they're going to need them, especially in English, right? So think of it like when you're looking at language, try to be as specific as possible as these small strategies that students can use or could use in their to develop their skills. Let me ask another example. So let's look at reading. If they are doing is reading part of this activity? Not so much. Okay, so listening. So they're watching the video. What are some learning strategies beyond what we've discussed so far that would promote the listening comprehension of your students? What could your students do? Any ideas that we haven't mentioned?
In the platform I give the instruction, but maybe I notice right now maybe I have to delete because we want the students to be aware, looking for those strategies that is better for them. They can watch the video 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So maybe it's a strategy to get the session.
Yeah.
Well, a simple strategy to improve the listening of the students for the video would be maybe to give them the vocabulary and make them read aloud.
But the point is, well, I understand like that the students must be aware by him or herself what the strategies is better for he or she. Because if I tell them do this, do that.
Well, you are asking that, right? You are
Well,
asking
well,
what
what
would
I'm-
be a strategy that can help students.
Alex is right in the sense that I'm not so much asking about teaching strategies as I am learning strategies. Now I know sometimes it gets really intertwined, and Alex is kind of showing very good examples of teaching strategies too. But my point here with the learning strategies is what can the students do themselves, and how can we promote them doing those learning strategies to help develop a skill? Now, I realize sometimes it's a little confusing because there is a little bit of overlap. But the difference is the learning strategy is what the learner does or could do to promote it. Now, we may have to do something. Maybe it's not going to be implicit, or maybe the students aren't going to recognize how to do it. We may have to guide them. But the point is that they are doing it, or they're deciding to do it to help them, because the point is, we want them to be self-aware. This is the autonomous learning aspect of it. It's like to say, okay, I'm gonna watch this. I want you guys to watch this video. You can use your dictionaries. Here's a mind map or an organizational chart. You can use this. You can take notes as you watch the video. You can take notes after the video. If you want to just listen to it and then take notes, fine. If you want to take notes while you listen, fine. So, note taking during and or after. There's two strategies. A graphic organizer. If you want the students to watch it on their computer and pause it, that's another option. Subtitles, that's another strategy.
So teaching a strategy, subtitle?
Subtitle.
Is teaching a strategy or learning?
Learning. Well, learning if they're controlling it, that's the point. It's like, if Alex does it on the screen, well now it's a teaching strategy. If I do it on my iPad and I decide to do it, then it's a learning strategy. Same strategy, but it just depends on who's making the decision. And that's important. It's like, who's gonna make the decision? We may have to give them options. In fact, in my case, I always have to give my students options of the strategies because most students aren't aware of these strategies. They won't do it. And so that's kind of what I'm after here. This is the idea. Does that make sense with these the decision making is what's key here. Who's making the decision ultimately to do these strategies?
I wanted to share my great experience during this semester for my undergraduate course. So I have realized that what many this is the ideal conditions to try to teach content and learning issues during any course. So this is the main purpose of the design approach. But the real condition in the everyday, when the particular topic is so complex, I assume that in most of the careers there is statistics, very complex topics with a high grade, or people pass fail the exams. So maybe the students, oh, this is very difficult. In addition, the professor adds additional complexity. I mean, I defend the idea that it's very important for the future of our students to learn and speak in English. So there is a lot of great opportunities to look in the professional life. I totally agree. But I have faced that at first they like the extra activities, 5 to 10 minutes, but it's necessary also to cover that, the normal course. So my reflection about it is maybe for undergraduate groups where the people need to learn the content of this course. Usually it's very complex last semester. Maybe we can use, in particular, these techniques only for try to establish some motivation needs, or maybe some particular students that they advance to next step. But my conclusion is for graduate students, we need to push with these techniques in order to obtain the most benefits. And an additional comment that I have used, very small, in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but it's a lot of effort for the professor, is transferring the past, the transcript of a small part of the video or text. Well, not video, or listening, maybe 2 or 3 sentences.
And is this something you do or the students do?
No, well, I can gather in advance the transcript.
Okay, but we want to focus on learning strategies.
What I believe it's important, the learning strategies and teaching strategy, because, well, I get it in the advanced transcript, I transfer to the students, I ask, please read several times, please consult dictionary if required, please use a computer to listening, because tomorrow we will hear this small video for 5 minutes. But they consider an extra activity, like, okay, it's okay, it's part of the, maybe, how to say, to refresh.
I think, yeah, and I think the
the
point I want to make here with the strategies is one that it's designed to help. It's not just extra work. In fact, it's not even an assignment. I would never approach a strategy as necessarily as everybody, you must do this. I mean, I've never really I've never used those words when I talk to my students about strategies.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody must take notes. I mean, I could, but I haven't been. I always try to frame it as, okay, if you're having problems with this video, you could take notes. If you're having problems with this video, you can pause it and replay it. Okay? If you're having problems understanding this video, okay, you can fill out this graphic organizer. I try to frame it like that because I want them to make the decision. Your point about, well, this is just extra work, I don't mean to, I would not necessarily frame it like that. I wouldn't say that everybody has to do it because I want my students to become more autonomous. I want them to be better learners, more efficient learners, okay? And so maybe instead of, think of it like this, a strategy could actually save time. I mean, it's possible. I mean, that's actually the reason to use a strategy, is If I watch this video, if I don't use any strategies, either I'm not going to understand the video, it's possible, or I'm going to spend a lot of time wasting my time trying to understand it because I'm not using good strategies. If I know how to use good strategies, I'm actually going to save time because I don't have to watch it maybe 100 times. I just watch a little bit of it and then I take notes. Then I watch another 30 seconds and then I take notes. I mean, that's a strategy. So look at it like a strategy is to try to make your learning more effective and efficient, not so much as extra work necessarily. Okay, I mean, certainly it could be extra work if you're framing it like, okay, everybody must do this regardless if you need it or not. I mean, some students may not need it. And so for me, it's all about, okay, how was that? Did you understand the video? No, I'm lost, I don't understand the video. Okay, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? No, I haven't tried it. Well, try it. You let me know how it works for you. Did you see what that? You know, and if, you know, the idea is that you're bringing the self-awareness with your students. And again, it's not like just another activity, right? So, yeah. So, but Jose mentioned using a dictionary, right? That could be a learning strategy.
Well, I would like to hear the real experience during this semester for my colleagues with your undergraduate groups about the application of some of these techniques in this semester. Any experience? We have experience, right? In statistics, colleague? I don't know.
Well, Alex has already shared. Does anyone else want to share your experience?
The reaction of the students, because statistics is very, any course of statistics.
Well, Alex shared, I think, experience with your survey, right, Alex? If you want to share, I don't think Jose was here when the
What
survey.
has been the reaction? What has been the reaction of the students to this extra effort?
What they think about this kind of activities.
Yes.
Well,
I don't know if they ask why. The topic is complex. I don't understand statistics, so why all this kind?
No, but they like to do this maybe say 5 to 10 minutes activity where they speak in English, they practice a little bit English. I just remember that one of the activities I gave them like a 2 pages document where in that case I assigned one topic, one technique, specific statistic technique they have to read and they have to understand. And after that I gave them the time, just one person per team go in the front and they explain to all the class what is about this technique in English. And then I ask them to answer a survey about the activity, and they say they like it and they think this must be implemented in each class.
Now, one thing I would add to that, I think using surveys is really good.
Yeah.
If you can include in the survey the strategies versus, like, you know, the strategies versus the activity itself, because there's 2 things going on here, right? One is, oh, I like the activity, and the other is, oh, these strategies either helped me or they didn't help me.
An additional question: how many effort for you, like professor, was required to invest in these 5 minutes, in these 5 or 10 minutes?
No, it's hard.
1 hour, 2 hours?
Yeah, maybe 2 3 hours. I don't know because you have to link the topic of the subject. You have to think the specific activity or performance task.
This is additional right?
Yeah.
But notice Jose, that we're not distinguishing between strategies and activities. Do you see that?
Yes.
He mentioned 3 hours. He's not saying 3 hours of strategies. Do you see
No.
that? So we really don't know unless we actually do a discourse analysis where we're actually in his class saying, okay, this amount of time is strategic or whatever. And the last thing I want to mention here about strategies is in the BA we have a course in strategies and we have a propedéutico. before the students get into the actual BA. And one of the courses is a course in strategies, just learning strategies. So I'm of the belief that learning strategies really is applicable from the very beginning, as when, in fact, students need it at the most at the beginning of their BA, because they're still learning how to learn. They're still learning how to be.
That should be a class in the high school.
Of course.
It should be in the high school.
And they probably,
Before they go to the professional.
Yes.
of course.
What, however, well, this is for me, a hidden condition in our educational system in Mexico, because of course, English schools are taught from the first 3 years in high, well, elementary 3 years and our next 6 years in advance before to arrive to the university. However, I'm going to clarify, I don't reject these ideas, I don't reject the relevance to this idea of what I taking this course. I agree totally with several ideas for learning strategies and teaching strategies. Maybe my real complaint here is like me, professor at your case. In order to do some 5 minutes activity with the students, is necessary to invest 3-4 hours. At the present particular time, I oversaturate.
Okay, but what, sorry. Yeah.
So what? This is only my real comment here. So I think it's very important. I don't know my colleagues.
Yeah.
What is your case?
Yeah,
Or
Mr.
how many
Mr.
activities
Thomas.
has person issues?
I think teaching and learning strategies are not two things separated. Because if he chooses a particular video, a particular topic, he chooses like a teaching strategy because he don't give the option.
Exactly.
Maybe he could be choose your topic or choose
Right.
or search your video, and that means another particular learning strategy.
And skill.
Skills.
And skill. Both.
Yeah, and a skill. But if we mix some instructions like teaching strategy with a list of options open in order that they can select their preference and they can develop their skills. Yeah.
Well, this is like a personal experience, because I try to let my students decide what's going to be the main topic they're going to elaborate the final.
Excuse me, during this course, during this semester, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
So I gave them as a survey, what kind of topic do you want to discuss? I plan to.
In English or Spanish?
Spanish.
Okay, both.
Let me
Yes.
mention another. And after that, I said, okay, three subjects in great areas to talk about, and you have 1 month to decide. And I have right now 47 students, only 3 answered the survey. So I switched the strategy. And yes.
This is a real.
I took this the palita de membrillo strategy, and I told him, okay, if you don't answer tomorrow morning this, you won't have access to the exam. And it happens.
Right.
Magic.
Magic.
I mean,
Right.
there's a Harry Potter.
Yes.
So, well, this was only
I noticed that.
experience that
Yeah.
it didn't help me as a strategy, so I had to switch.
Right, as long as we recognize that that is a teaching strategy.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, we're all gonna have our own opinions about what to do. I just want us to be sure that we're clear in what is a learning strategy. I don't want us to mix up teaching strategies with activities, with learning activities. So sometimes we're saying words like activities, sometimes we're giving examples of teaching strategies, and sometimes we give examples of learning strategies. I just want us at the end of the day to be able to distinguish between those 3 words, those terms, that we're not mixing.
Allowing somebody to decide what to do and how and to argue why to choose something isn't a learning strategy.
No.
No.
From a learning, what you're doing, which is good. I'm not saying that it's no, it's excellent what you're doing. You're differentiating the instruction or the content or the process. You're differentiating. That is a teaching strategy. Now, let's say that you say, okay, you guys decide on what content. Okay, they say, okay, I'm going to choose this content. Okay, they made a decision. Now, they know they have to go online to find that content. Now they can't find the content. They're having problems with the skill of looking for an article. So you teach them about Boolean searches, or they know about Boolean searches, the like and, or using the quotes, different tips on searching. Now that's a strategy that they can use to find the information that they want, that they need. Now whether they know that themselves or whether you help them, teach them that, and then they do it on their own, for me it's still a learning strategy, because that's a very specific thing, right, a Boolean search, to be able to try to find certain information. So for me, like a differentiated instruction is more towards still a teaching strategy, a very good one. And what he did was he was assessing, formative assessment, it didn't work, he adapted and changed it and got some results, and that's it's all good. But the idea here is more about learning strategies and autonomous.
We had discussed before, I mean, what is strategy and what is skill, right?
Yeah.
Now you're mentioning, when you mention, for example, that on certain strategies, we need to clarify what is a learning and a teaching strategy, the difference between both. Well, for me, it's just related to the user, right? I mean, learning strategy is used for the student, and teaching strategy is used for the teacher to teach something. Am I right? Because I got lost. I mean, at the beginning we were discussing about just skill versus strategy.
Right.
And I found a definition that I like it,
Uh-huh.
and I want to share with you. It says, skill is the destination, strategy is the journey.
Is the what?
The journey. Yeah.
I'll write the journey.
It says
Yeah.
that, so we learn strategies to do a skill.
That's right. Now, who's doing the skill?
Well, the skill-
So let me follow up on the very good point, right? And again, this is why
N versus means, excuse me, N versus means.
So the idea here is that that's why I keep asking us to think about what's the relationship between the strategy and the skill. Who's doing the skill?
The students.
The students.
Okay.
So the strategy needs to come from the students at the end of the day. Now, whatever we do to facilitate that, okay, that's fine, that's all good. We may have to facilitate that. But the idea is that the strategy is implemented by the student to help the skill of the student.
That's a learning strategy.
Yes.
A learning
That's a learning strategy.
That
Now-
the students do.
That the students do, right, that the students do. Now, of course, we have teaching strategies, of course. And maybe I didn't make that distinction clear at the beginning when I said what's the difference between strategy and skill. I just kind of made it very general. But the purpose of this unit, because we only have 1 week out of this whole course is about teaching strategies, basically. We have basically 1 week.
Teaching, not learning. Teaching strategy.
Well, mainly teaching strategies, because we're focusing on what you want to do. But there's some overlap. I understand the confusion because there's a relationship between what we do as a teacher and what the students
Maybe
do.
the same, maybe the same activity or task that is used by the professor, of course, is called teaching strategy. But maybe the same activity done by the students is called learning strategy.
Absolutely. If they make a decision and they are doing it, like if you're teaching them Boolean search and then they do the Boolean search, they choose it and it's working for them, then that's a strategy for searching.
Yes. Maybe now I realize that I am using a teaching and learning strategy, because I want the students to know the topic, to understand the topic, but give it then this video, but also the learning strategies that comes from the student in order to develop or improve these two skills.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and of course, it's not like it's all one or the other. No, of course, there's a lot of teaching strategies going on at the same time, and hopefully there's a lot of learning strategies going on. But what I want us to realize is the difference between the two, and that we're help promoting those, and that they are making those decisions so that they can see, oh wow, when I use the dictionary, it really helps my reading comprehension. I'm going to do that in the future. That's the idea.
But the student at the moment, one student could say that.
Right.
Another student could say that.
Exactly.
For me, the subtitle was wonderful and produced the dictionary. Then
Right. It's fine, it's fine, that's great.
Okay.
That's great. Yeah, it's not like, and that's the difference between saying, okay, everybody must take notes. Well, teacher, I don't want to take notes. For me, it's better to do a dictionary. No, you have to take notes. That's not what this is about. It's more like saying, okay, what's working for you? And it doesn't take a lot of time. You can just say, yeah, you can just say, hey, what did you do to understand that text? It doesn't have to take a lot of time. It's just a little bit of reflection. You know? So, does that kind of, kind of, sort of? We'll talk, I want to spend another day next week on strategies. I want to hear more of your experiences and keep this discussion going here so we feel more comfortable really looking at, because the other course that I'm teaching, we're starting with this as well, and I think we need to talk a little bit more about it, just so that we can come up with more examples or possible examples of different strategies that we can use, that our students can use for their own skill development. So, okay, guys, thank you overtime. Thank you. We'll see you. Yes.
What
Yeah.
Sure.
Ya, ya lo tengo. Sí, gracias.
Vamos ya a proponer una actividad, un mapa conceptual donde algunos estudiantes hicieron.
Ah, ok, muy bien.
También un video de tres, ¿no? Pues son muchos,
Ah, ok,
pero
gracias.
para por lo menos ya una evidencia.
Ah, ok,
Sí,
muy bien.
para comentarios.
Ok, gracias.
Y luego lo que se ve, por eso se manda
So I have, this is the app, the icon.
Yes.
Safety software.
This item could not, because Otero standalone is not open. I think you need to download and install the app on your computer, maybe.
Okay.
And I
But
think,
like
I think
the,
that,
like a plugin, something like that.
no, I think it's actually an app that you would download and install. If you go to Zotero, the main page, there's an option to download. And I think if you download it, that should. But that's weird because I don't think Zotero's installed on this computer, so I'm not sure. There are some sites that it doesn't work.